Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Today, we are going to be talking about the brand new Disney Plus Marvel Studios series, Hawkeye, that dropped last night. Now, that's pretty much what's going to be the main topic of today, so we are going to kick things off with the spoiler warning and the spoiler banner. So, Kyle, if you would. All right. Now, normally we're going to do these shows on Thursdays, but there's this little holiday tomorrow that we're going to be spending time with our families. So we're doing the spoiler chat today. And normally, again, I like to wait till Thursday because then everybody has all day Wednesday to watch the show. But I don't want to not do it this week because of the holiday. So here we are. If you have not seen the show, we're going to have this episode on YouTube in a little while. You can absolutely go get it off of you. Watch this after you do it. It'll be there. And then you can hear all the thoughts and you can. Now, you can't join in the conversation, but if you haven't seen the show yet, you can't really do that. And if you haven't yet, can you hit that like and subscribe button that's over there? Or the thumbs up or, those things. Would love to see that. Would be greatly appreciated. All right, let's get into this series. Now, Clint Barton, a.k.a. Hawkeye, played by Jeremy Renner, first appeared in Thor as a cameo, was then in Avengers in 2012, where he got mind-controlled by Loki and ended up really only becoming a hero or, kind of free will person for the Battle of New York, which is very important to the series. But also important to the series is where the character continued. Now, he's popped up in Age of Ultron, where he gave that great speech to Scarlet Witch to get her motivated to go out there and fight and to become an Avenger. He also had an interesting relationship with Pietro. And then, of course, in Endgame, or Infinity War and Endgame, he wasn't really around for Infinity War, but Civil War he was in. But he wasn't really around for Infinity War. But Endgame, we see him become something different. He loses his entire family and he almost goes Punisher at that point. He becomes Ronin and decides that the people who got snapped, or the people who didn't get snapped, if the criminal element wasn't worthy of being left, having survived the snap. So he kind of goes after them and creates a lot of villains and a lot of enemies. And that's your basis for this series, is it's going to tie together all of Hawkeye's appearances. It's, the 2012, it's him being a mentor to Scarlet Witch, or Wanda at the time, and his family, the importance of his family we get from Age of Ultron, and of course his time as Ronin. Those are three major ingredients into this series, or at least that's what it seems. What we got was a Kate Bishop heavy series. The first episode has so little Hawkeye in it, or actual Clint Barton in it, that it's hard to call it a Hawkeye series because she's not Hawkeye yet. He is, and well, we're going to get into that. I'm going to break down both episodes, my thoughts on them, where I think it goes well, where I think it goes wrong. I have very mixed feelings on this right now. I have hopes that it's going to improve, but I have issues with what we're at now. But let's dive in. All right. Starting with the first episode. Now, the opening is a flashback to 2012 and the Battle of New York. But we start off by meeting a very young Kate. And let's see, that would have been 8 or 9-year-old Kate, I'm guessing, because this is supposed to take place in 2025. This was 2012, 13 years. Kate's 22 at this point. So 9-year-old Kate. We meet a 9-year-old Kate who's overhearing her parents, Eleanor, played by Vera Farmiga, and Derek, Brian D.R.C. James, arguing about money. And, Derek has grown up rich, and this is, I guess this is the penthouse that he's inherited from his family. Eleanor did not grow up rich, is what we're kind of picking up from this. And to her, selling the penthouse is no big deal. But to him, it's his legacy, his family. So you can see there's a problem already right there. And she overhears this and gets upset. So he goes and talks to her. And we get the idea that maybe her relationship with her dad is much better than her relationship with her mom. That there seems to be a strain between the two. That they don't quite click. Which I find kind of fascinating because at 9 years old, it seems like there should be a connection. But you kind of get the feeling that she's almost new to the family, which doesn't make any sense. But he goes up to talk to Kate and gives her kind of a pep talk and how it's going to be okay. He's got a plan and stuff, and he's going to go down. And she says, "Well, what are you going to do if something or other bad?" He says, "I'll do what I always do, which is protect you." And he's going to go to his office downstairs, and she's supposed to go have lunch with her mom. She does. We see Eleanor have kind of an interesting thing where she flips a carrot up off the plate into the air and catches it. And I don't know if that's supposed to tell us she's a cool mom, or is that supposed to tell us she's got some skills? I'm thinking it's that she's got some skills. Now, she has this discussion with her about, let's play checkers. You go get the checkers. I'm going to go downstairs for a second. And when Kate goes upstairs to get the checkers, that's when the Battle of New York starts. Chitauri are flying by outside her window. Things are starting to go crazy. She's scared, screaming for her parents. Ends up in another room where part of the entire wall gets blown out. And you see a Chitauri flying in. But he's taken out by Hawkeye. And it's that moment in the Avengers where Hawkeye just takes a shot without looking to the side. That's the shot that takes out that Chitauri. And then she looks out and sees him fighting. And from where she stands, he looks heroic as hell. He pushes one off a building, kicks another, leaps off the building, catches it with the rope, swings down into the window. Looks great. But we've seen the Avengers, and we see that he's up there firing away and runs out of arrows. He has to pull one out of a corpse, reload the tip on it. Then he jumps, and once he hits that window and goes through, he lies on the floor there in pain for a while. But that's not what young Kate sees. Now, she's staring at this, and then finally her mom comes up and gets her and starts running, we got to get to safety. And she's like, "Where's Dad? Where's Dad? Where's Dad?" And what we end up seeing is that Derek dies. Her father dies. Now, this is already a big change from the comics that, we know that they're using Matt Fraction and David Aja's run as kind of a template for this. But in the comics, it's Kate's mom is passed, and Kate's dad is the one that's still in her life and has ties to the mob. So that's kind of interesting. This scene is terrific. There's a lot of constant shots, so we follow her out of a room, around a corner, stuff like that, to get that frantic kinetic pace of being in the middle of a battle. The young actress whose name I couldn't find yet, she did a great job at showing the distress and really just being in the moment. And it's a really good job, like I said. But we don't see Derek's body. We don't really see how Derek dies. We just get his funeral, and they're talking about, the Chitauri, and Kate says to her mom, "What do we do if they come back?" And Eleanor's like, "They're not going to come back. The heroes have shown them, that that the world's protected," type of thing. And she says, "But I'll protect you. Whatever you need." And she goes, and Kate goes, "I need a bow and arrow." And it's because of having seen Hawkeye fighting the Chitauri, she wanted that. Now, at that point, she'd already, she said she took up karate at 5. And so she was already a karate and gymnast and stuff like that. So really, she was just adding archery. It wasn't like she started all of her training right after her dad died. She had gone rock climbing with him, and she had done, like I said, she started her karate at 5. Then they go into an opening credits scene, which, again, is very cool. It looks like it's straight out of the comics, but it also gives us the rest of her origin, which I think is a great way to do it. We see her training, the black belt, the archery, and we see her getting better and better. Her awards are getting more impressive. She gets her butt kicked as a yellow belt, but then when she gets her, by the time we see her as a black belt, she's doing great. Her gymnastics, just down the line, we see her improving. And you get this interesting take on the character that you kind of feel like she's going to be this dedicated fighter. It's almost a Batman-esque opening, but she didn't lose both parents, but she lost her favorite parent to this thing. And she's got this fear of taking care of everybody, this fear of them coming back. Problem is, the next scene we get, we meet a 22-year-old Kate, played by Haley Steinfeld, and she's climbing the side of Stane building. Yeah, this is named for Obadiah Stane from Iron Man 3, or Iron Man. Rich people buy buildings. That's what they do. But she's up there, and she's trying to come through on a bet, I guess it is, to make the bell ring. And it seems like it's a very old bell. Maybe it doesn't ring often. But and she doesn't understand the concept of how a bell works, which surprises me. Is it the bell you got it, or is it the swingy thing, as she calls it? And it's like, you'd think people would know that, at least at that age. But so she takes the first shot, hits the bell, it goes ding, and that's it. So she sets up the second arrow. It's got a little grabber on it. It shoots. It's a great shot. It hits the clapper. They go bang, 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 bang. It's great. And then we realize that the reason the bell hasn't been ringing is because it's really super old, and the action makes the bell fall. It takes out the clock tower, and of course security shows up at that moment. Now, the one interesting thing is that she's on the phone through this whole thing talking to a friend named Greer. And there is a character in the Marvel Comics named Greer. It's Greer Nelson, who ends up becoming Tigra. So maybe that's a nod to that character. Maybe we're going to get Tigra one day. Tigra was an Avenger. Tigra also had about 6 months on a pleasure planet with Eros, who we just met. So maybe. But my problem with that scene is we spend that first chunk of the series, or of the episode, setting up this origin for this very dedicated person who, wants to protect things, and then we immediately cut to her in the future, and she's shooting bells. It just seemed very contradictory, And that's how we're introduced to her. And where I really liked the 9-year-old version, the 22-year-old version kind of got off on the wrong foot with me. Now, we cut away from her and we go to Clint, Jeremy Renner, and he's sitting in the theater with his kids watching Rogers the Musical. And while I kind of thought this was going to be played more for laughs a bit, but in reality, this is kind of a PTSD moment for Clint, because he looks up there and not only is he seeing this huge battle with aliens that he had to deal with, he's seeing his best friend that he watched die being portrayed on the screen dancing around. And there's even a little girl in the audience dressed as Natasha as well. And he ends up getting up and leaving, and it comes across in the trailer that maybe it's bad, or, you know, like I said, for jokes, but I don't think that's it. I think he's getting up and leaving because he's having a rough time dealing with Natasha's passing, you know, and what happened, that sacrifice. So we get that from Clint. He goes to get some air. He goes to the restroom. There's a little graffiti on the toilet that says Thanos was right. And you get this look on Clint's face. He's like, maybe, which I thought was kind of fascinating. But then this guy comes in and he tries to get a selfie with Clint while they're standing at the urinal, and he breaks the guy code number 1. I mean, he walks into the next stall, or the next urinal. Stand-up urinals, there's one right, there's like 3 on one side, there's like 7 on the other side, there's plenty of room. He takes the one exactly next to Clint with no one else in there. Bad etiquette. Definitely bad etiquette. I cringed when that guy stood by him at the urinal. Yes, Brian, exactly. Yeah, that was just like, and by the way, side note, we're doing okay on time. I had a situation like that happen to me once at San Diego Comic-Con. I was in the restroom. There were no open spots, so you were standing next to everybody. And I was standing next to an artist named Stephen Hughes, the creator of Lady Death with Brian Pulido. And Stephen was great. I'd known him for a little while, but you know, so when somebody came in and asked if, you know, walked up and asked for an autograph while we're at the urinal, and I'm like, oh, do you ever get used to that? And Steven's like, you know, it's no big deal. And then when I turned around, I realized the kid was holding my comic, not Steven's, and that was really weird. So what I think happened was we sold, it was like my first book out, and we sold it, and they sent the kid after me to get the signature. But all right. Now he gets outside of the bathroom. He, you know, is like trying to catch his breath. It's obviously upsetting him. And his kids come out and they all leave the musical early. And the musical itself, like I said, I thought it was going to be played for laughs, but it's somewhat sincere. You know, I mean, there's one guy in the cast that's a big Broadway star from Rent. The song isn't horrible. I mean, it was not great, but you know, they take the tagline, "I can do this all day," and there's a lot of lines from the actual Battle of New York. So, but since they were kind of homaging Hamilton, they probably should have asked Lin-Manuel to actually write a song in his style. That would have been, but yeah, it was an interesting scene. I do like the fact that Ant-Man was in the Battle of New York, and Clint points out like he wasn't even there. So you get this kind of a rivalry between the two of them, I think, even though Hawkeye is the one that brought Ant-Man to Civil War, which I thought was kind of funny. So they leave the thing and they're going to go get dinner. And at dinner, we get to hear from Linda Cardellini. So I know a lot of people were worried that she wasn't in the trailers and she's not at New York with them. She's home getting ready for the holidays. It's just Clint getting some time with the kids. So, and remember that the youngest boy is Nathaniel, named after Natasha, Pietro, named after Pietro. But they go get Chinese food, and they're making their Christmas plans, and it's obvious that he really wants to spend Christmas with the kids. And the waiter comes up and tells him that meal's on us. You saved the planet. It's the least we could do. And you could see that he really feels uncomfortable with that. I think Tony Stark would have gone, oh, well, yeah, you're welcome. No problem. But Hawkeye, it doesn't feel right for him. And it's kind of an important theme in this series is that Clint never wanted to be a hero. Clint was an agent that got bumped up to the big leagues, He's standing there with gods, and he just wants to do his job and go and quietly go back to his family. And he's kind of lost that anonymity because everybody knows he's Hawkeye now. But that comes up in the series later on as well. But I have a feeling it's going to be a bigger part. And there's a pet peeve of mine of having more than one character use a code name at the same time. It's like, how many Green Lanterns do we need? Yes, I know it's a core, but how many from Earth do we need? How many Batmans do we need at the same time? How many Robins do we need at the same time? Or Spider-Mans? And I realize that they're creating these other characters. Miles Morales is a great character, but why not give him his own name or make him Spider-Man and take, Peter Parker in another direction? Why would there be two Spider-Man? It's a pet peeve of mine. But in this case, it kind of works because Clint never wanted to be Hawkeye. Clint, I don't think he would have a problem if Kate wants to go out and be Hawkeye and be a hero, because he's like, good, go, I'm going home. So this is one of the few cases where problem is I'm a Hawkeye fan. I'm a Clint fan. And I want him to stick around, but I get it. But all right, so we switch back to Kate, who arrives in New York. Her mother asks her to come there first because we find out that Kate has her own apartment, but she has also got a room at her mom's place. And her mom is living very well. So it's obviously that whatever financial situations they had, they ended when her dad died. Seems kind of convenient, but they talk about the destruction of the clock tower and how she can make it up to him by going to this charity event that night, putting on the red dress that's in her room and going. And then she starts noticing all these swords around the house, and that's when it kind of clicks. Jack Duquesne comes in. This is Jack, played by Tony Dalton. And you realize that he's moved in, that he's living there now. And this puts Kate kind of on edge. Now, you realize it's been 13 years since her father died, and her mom is just now moving on, but still, it doesn't work for Kate. And she doesn't trust Jack. And we really don't get why. She just immediately doesn't trust Jack. And we don't see any flashbacks to where they've dealt with each other in the past or anything like that. We're just given the fact that she doesn't trust him or doesn't seem to like it or finds the whole situation wrong. And that's it. And we're just kind of given that. It's like, and if you take it as, well, she feels he's replacing her dad. It's been 13 years. I think Eleanor waited long enough. But yeah, so Kate's not very happy about that. And they go to this event. And instead of wearing the red dress her mom asked her to, Kate decides to show up in an all-black tuxedo, which is ironic because that's exactly what the waitstaff is wearing. So she looks like just a waiter being lazy. Now, this struck me as, why would she do this? Oh, because she needs to for the plot. That's how it came across to me. it didn't strike me as a lot of Kate's reactions to things don't feel like they have a basis for what she does. Why does she refuse to wear the red dress and wear the black tuxedo instead? Where'd she get the black tuxedo? Did she just happen to have a black tuxedo? They didn't give us a scene where she walks up, looks at the red dress, goes, tosses it aside, and then there's the black tuxedo. We don't get anything like that. We just get her showing up in a black tuxedo. And she runs into Armand, who is Jack's uncle, which is interesting because in the comics, Armand is Jack's dad, but he's the uncle here. And we find out that he has another son or a nephew or grandson or whatever, also named Armand, is that the family kind of carries on. But he lets it slip that Eleanor and Jack are actually engaged and that he's really not happy about it. He doesn't trust Eleanor, which I thought was interesting because it continues this setup, and it happens through the first two episodes where they're very, very critically and very heavily pointing at Jack as a bad guy. But then there's these little breadcrumbs on the side they keep throwing out there that, no, maybe it's Eleanor. Now, later Kate ends up overhearing Armand threatening Eleanor. And she doesn't like that because she's overprotective of her mom and stuff. She's got that since, this was a back in character that we saw in the beginning for me. But she follows him and goes down into the wine cellar where there's this black market auction going on. And she only gets in there because she's wearing the suit, the tuxedo that makes it look like she's one of the waiters. So she picks up a tray and heads down. So very convenient. Like I said, they don't really give us a reason why she's wearing that tuxedo, but the fact she is gets her into where she needs to be. Now, at this auction, it's like I said, it's a black market auction. So there's some odd stuff like a Triceratops head, which, by the way, would look awesome right here. I would totally put a Triceratops head right on this wall. Just saying. They also auctioned off Ronan's retractable sword, and they were about to auction off his suit. Now, the actual auction for the sword was interesting because Armand went after it, and Jack went after it. Now, we've already established that Jack loves swords, and of course, Jack Duquesne in the comics is the swordsman. Kind of makes sense. We don't really know why Armand wanted the sword. What was his purpose? And he spent like $470,000 to buy this retractable sword. And of course, the sword was recovered from the Avengers compound. So obviously, there's other stuff from Avengers compound that somebody walked away with. Now, as they're about to, and Kate is doing this whole thing of trying to hide from the head of the caterers and stuff so that, because she's not where she's supposed to be. But the wall explodes, and we get our first look at the tracksuit mafia. Now, in the comics, they're also called the tracksuit vampires. Here, they only call them the tracksuit mafia. And along with them comes, what's his name? I've got it here. Kazi, who isn't Russian, but he's the clown, played by Fra Fee. He's leading them and telling them, okay, remember, the watch is what we're here for, nothing else. So, okay, I just realized we are at the halfway point, so let's do a quick commercial and we'll come right back after a minute. Maybe.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hi, I'm Nathan Fox. I'm chair of the MFA Visual Narrative Program at the School of Visual Arts, as well as co-creator and artist on the Weatherman series through Image Comics. And you are watching The Experience.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are talking about the new series Hawkeye. 2 episodes dropped last night, and I'm going to jump right back into it because we still got a lot of ground to cover. Now, Brian Rivera pointed out Armand's line of "I have powerful friends too." Now that, I think, was a huge line in the series because not only does that make it sound like Eleanor is connected, but with him being connected too, there could be rivals going on there too, which could make the series even bigger, and it is another geared towards possibly getting the return of one of the characters from Netflix. But we'll get into that later. All right, so Tracksuit Mafia comes in, they blow up their wall, they're trying to find this specific watch, and we don't know what this watch is. We don't know if it's Stark Tech, if it's the watch he had in Civil War that he could actually turn into a repulsor glove. I have no idea why they wanted this watch. It doesn't look that special. It doesn't look like the one from Civil War, but Tony, he's building stuff all the time. But in the confusion of the heist, Jack grabs the retractable sword, drops it in his pocket, and leaves. Kate, and this is another place where I have a problem with the series, puts on the Ronin costume and proceeds to fight the bad guys. Now, I don't have a problem with her fighting the bad guys. I don't understand why she took the time to put on the Ronin costume. This is supposed to take place in Christmas of 2025, 2 years after the blip. Everybody returned, is what the director has said. So, all right, so she puts on the Ronin costume, which, again, it doesn't make sense to me why she makes this decision. Just the mask would be one thing, just to cover her identity. But then she also stands in front of Jack Duquesne and says, "Hi." And, and it looks like he kind of figures out who it is. But she puts on this costume. I guess she doesn't know the history of it. Maybe. But she puts on the Ronin costume, fights some of the bad guys, ends up getting out of the building, runs. While she does it, she ends up saving the dog, the one-eyed dog. We met the one-eyed dog a little earlier, but she saves him and takes him with her. And they end up going back to her place, and she's wearing the costume through the whole thing. And, goes there, drops the dog off, changes, heads back out, still wearing the costume. Cut to the hotel where Clinton and his family are. They're watching TV, and suddenly Clinton sees his old Ronin costume on TV and doesn't really say anything, but I'm pretty sure there was a long stream of curse words in his head. Because this is a suit where he's made a lot of enemies wearing. It popping up again is going to be a huge problem for him. So he goes out to try to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, Kate finds Armand's house through her mom's security app. Her mom's owned a security company, and she's using this security app. And this is another thing that people find each other really easy in this series in New York, which makes no sense. But she goes to Armand's house, and the first thing she notices is that he's got monogrammed butterscotch candy, which is because he's old, and old people have butterscotch candy, is what Marvel is trying to tell you. And it's actually kind of true. But when you get old, butterscotch becomes the thing. Anyway, he's got these monogrammed butterscotch candies. Then she goes into another room and finds Armand dead with what very much appears to be a sword cut a hole in him, that somebody ran him through with a sword, then took the sword and left. Now, his house cleaner, something shows up really late at night with dinner. And of course, Kate runs, goes back outside, and immediately the tracksuit mafia finds her and attacks. And she's trying to fight them off, is not doing as well as she had done earlier, because now she's getting all of them at once. She ends up running along and finding an unlocked car on a street in New York. Gets in, locks all the doors, and then they're just pounding down the windows. And one guy actually breaks the window with his bare fist. But then Clint arrives and takes them all out like nothing, grabs Kate, pulls her into an alley, pulls off her mask, and is just stunned to see that this 22-year-old girl is wearing his old costume. Now, that's pretty much the first episode in a nutshell. And while it was pretty much Kate's story, and that's the thing about the episode and the series so far, it really depends on you liking Kate. You need to like Kate. And at this point, I don't. She's obnoxious, makes a lot of choices that leads to trouble. I thought maybe in the trailer when she grabbed the suit, it was to protect Clint's identity, that she saw a photo or something saying that who Clint, and she stole it to try to protect him or something. But there's no reason she put the suit on. There's no real good reason why she was down in the basement or in the wine cellar anyway. She just, thought she heard Armand threaten her mom and decided to follow. Now, Eleanor has a line about the two types of people that think they're invincible, the young and the rich, and Kate has always been both. And that sums up the character at this point. Now, don't get me wrong. I've read the Fraction comics. I like them. I didn't love them, but I like them. A lot of people seem to love them. But the Fraction comics gives us a Kate that's kind of paired with kind of a sad sack Clint. He can't do anything right. He is constantly doing things wrong, and Kate has to be the more serious one. And Kate has to be the one to actually get things done. That's not the dynamic here. This dynamic is a Clint who is very competent, very experienced, is an ex-agent, knows what he's doing. But we're still getting the same Kate, who is acting like she knows everything better than he does, but she has no experience. So that dynamic I'm having a hard time with so far. I'm hoping that changes. But that's the big, like I said, that you really need to like Kate, but you don't, and you just have all this family drama with her, and you get like this little tiny bits of Clint. So moving on, we find out Clint leads her back to her place thinking it'll be safe because nobody's supposed to have known that she was in the costume. But of course, she wore the costume home, and the tracksuit mafia follows her there, and they throw Molotov cocktails in the window. Clint catches one at one point and throws it back out. Now, this is a good example of Clint's experience that, he sees it coming. He knocks the window out. When it comes in, he catches it, throws it back. Now, we see Kate's ability when she then takes a shot with the arrow or, shoots another one out of a guy's hand from inside the building. Great shot. The next thing that happens is there's a fire, because Molotov cocktails start fires, in the building, and she turns and decides to shoot an arrow at a fire extinguisher, which I think she thinks will pop and all the spray will come out and take care of the fire. The problem is it's all under pressure, so as soon as she hits it, it starts flying around the room and out the window and basically bouncing off the TSM's van. So you kind of see where the experience lies, and Kate's still learning. Well, the fire is in a place where they can't get to the costume. So they grab the dog and they get out, and, they end up hiding at her aunt's apartment. And we get to see Clint kind of becoming a mentor. They stop and get some stuff to wounds and to Band-Aids and stuff to clear up the wounds, because she got beat up pretty good and he did as well. So, and he kind of shows her how to do it properly. And so we get a little bit of the mentor thing, which I think they're going to try to get to. But it's just the start of it. And like I said, that's part of the character from Age of Ultron that I think we're going to get more and more of. Now, he ends up leaving her there, going back, dresses up as a fireman, basically steals a coat and a hat from a truck, goes in, blends in because he's a spy. It's what he does. But when he gets in there, you find out that the suit's already gone. He then goes back out and sees a sticker on on the fire truck that talks about NY LARPers, or what, New York LARPers and the LARPing Society, live action role play. And my first thought was, you going to put stickers on a fire truck? I didn't think you could do that. I didn't think you could put personal stickers on a fire truck. Anyway, he then goes back and he starts looking up this LARPing Society, discovers one of the members is posting that he's finally got a new costume and he's wearing the Ronin suit. So now Hawkeye has a clue. He wants Kate to stay at the apartment. She's like, I got to go to work. And that's another thing that seems kind of weird to me. She has to go to work, so that seems like it's a weekday. But most of the LARPing I know of takes place on the weekends because people have to work. So there's little things like that through this whole series, or the first 2 episodes, that bug me. And that's just one of them. Now, Kate goes and tries to talk to her mom at work. But, of course, Jack's there. So she can't really be as open about it because she wants to talk about what she saw. She wants to talk about, the sword and the tracksuit mafia and the black market auction, but doesn't feel she can in front of Jack because she's very suspicious of Jack. But at one point refers to him as an interloper, and Jack just recites all this stuff from a book he read about being a stepdad. It's an awkward scene, and she gets Eleanor ends up inviting her back to dinner and for that night, and Kate says fine, but I get to pick the topics. That's a setup. But the Barton family goes to dinner midway through a show which only makes sense with kids if you leave matinee on Sunday.
The first 2 shows take place over a Sunday, Monday.
Okay. Right.
So the auction is on a Sunday night. Clint's at a play on a Sunday night. And then he has to go to work on Monday the next day.
Right. So do you know of any LARPing societies that do it on Monday?
In New York, I mean, isn't every day a LARP day?
Moving on. So Clint has to go to this LARPing thing. And, of course, he can't just walk in. There's a woman there telling him he's got to follow the rules, which I don't know why he's doing this. He's a SHIELD agent. He's Hawkeye. He's well known. They even admit that they know. And all he wants to do is talk to this guy in the costume. But they make him sign up. They make him put on the armor. The whole thing. He gets the fake sword. He has to fight his way through, which is cute. It's a funny little scene. And then when he gets to the guy says, well, let me kill you because that'll, kind of make up for losing the costume. It'll be epic if I can actually do this. And he ends up doing this fake fight, and the guy wins. And he's good to his word. He hands the costume over. During the fight is great. There's actually this guy on the side doing the sound effects of the swords. Ching, 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 ching. It's great. But when he gives him the costume, they kind of give real names. Clint says, yeah, you can call me Clint. And the guy introduces himself as Grills. Now, it's played by Clayton English. Now, Grills is actually from the Matt Fraction run of one of the guys that lives in Hawkeye's apartment building who's always on the roof grilling. Now, if we're meeting Grill, who's also a fireman, maybe this is important to the series. If that's the case, great. But if this is just a fun Easter egg, then the whole LARPing scene doesn't even make sense. That why we did it. Nothing else comes out of it other than him meeting Grills. So unless Grills comes back, then we basically were just giving Hawkeye or Clint busy work to do so that Kate could go to work, is how it comes across. So I do hope Grills is going to be important, because otherwise, I mean, they could have just grabbed the thing on the way out, or he could have found it when he went back. But the extra LARPing scene, it's cute, but if they just put it in there because it's cute. Oh, and there's also a cop that calls Kate to talk about her apartment being burned, but she says, I'm at work, so he asks her to come in the next morning. That seemed very kind of light for having the fact that your apartment burned down. Normally cops are a little more aggressive over stuff like that. But anyway. But then we end up at the dinner between Kate and Jack and Eleanor. And they start talking about swords and stuff. And eventually she kind of prods him into talking about sword fighting and offers to sword fight. And it's an odd little duel between the two of them as they go back and forth. And she keeps telling him, stop letting me win. Stop letting me win. And eventually she takes a swing at him when he has his helmet off. And he immediately defends himself. And she goes, see, you have much more skill. And it's all about her proving that she has more skill, or he has more skill, and that he lied about it. And this doesn't change Eleanor's mind. It just kind of cements the suspicion for Kate, and I think for the viewer. He also, of course, offers her a piece of candy as kind of a mea culpa, or to make peace, and it's Armand's monogram candy from his house. So now, shift over to probably my second favorite scene. My first favorite scene is the opening where we get to see Hawkeye's the Battle of New York from a different angle. My second favorite scene is simply Hawkeye on the phone with his wife. He's got the sword back. He's going to stash it in a locker somewhere. He calls his wife. She refers to the costume as problematic, so which tells us that she knows the history. She knows what he did as Ronin whilst they were gone. Okay? That just tells you what kind of great relationship they have, that he can be that open and honest with her about this very dark period of his life. The second thing is she then asks what his play is going to be, because he's still got to get the TSM off of Kate's trail. TSM Traffic Suit Mafia. I'm just tired of saying that folied out. He says he's going to do a catch and release, which Laura then refers to, one of Natasha's plans. And the catch and release we saw at the beginning of the Avengers, where she allows herself to get captured, to get information, and then obviously gets away easily because she's good. That's what Clint's going to do, with the idea is he wants to get captured by the TSM so that he could then meet their leader and get them to back off. So he allows himself to be captured. And this is a great idea, except Kate finds out that Clint's been taken. She uses her mom's software again to track his phone. And she ends up dropping through the building, while he's sitting there saying, I don't know who this is at all. I don't know who you're talking about, da-da-da. She drops through the ceiling with a bow and arrow, looks up, sees all the guns, and goes, oh, I was supposed to bring a gun? So now they're both captured. They still think Kate is Ronin. And we get to meet their boss. We get to see Kazi for the first time with his... He had a ski mask on earlier, so we get to see Kazi, but we get to meet whoever, they're higher up. Now, is this the big boss? I don't think so, but it's Echo, played by Alakwa Cox. Maya Lopez, character, the deaf assassin, who, with the kind of Taskmaster's ability of photographic reflexes, we only get a glimpse of her. We see her feeling the vibrations from a speaker, and she does sign language. We know that Hawkeye has been learning sign language, so there's a chance that there might be a connection there because of that. Don't know, but that's pretty much where episode 2 ends, with Kate and Clint captured by the Tracksuit Mafia, and we're about to meet Echo. Now, running short on time. This really has been Kate's story, and while that's interesting, it's not what I thought we were going to get. I kind of expected it to be more of a balance between the two, but we're really getting like 80-20 Kate so far. And I think that Kate in the comics is cool, but we haven't got there yet with Kate in the series. She hasn't been very likable. She's done a couple things, saved a dog, but she's also done stuff like giving her mom a whole lot of grief, and we really don't see the reason for that grief. She gives Hawkeye or Clint a lot of grief for someone who's supposed to be kind of hero worship him. She gives him more crap. And again, in the comics, it makes sense because Clint's kind of a fucktard. Excuse my language. He's kind of a screw up in the comics. He's not here, so it really more comes across like she's entitled and she thinks she's all that. She even says at one point, well, some people call me the world's greatest archer. You're talking to Hawkeye. She doesn't listen to his experience. She thinks she's invincible. And I'm really hoping the series gets past that. I really want to like Kate. I want to like the dynamic between the two, but they haven't given us a reason to like her yet. Now, the introduction of Echo as head of the TSM makes me think that the rumors of Vincent D'Onofrio returning as the Kingpin may have some validity, because Echo is completely tied to Daredevil and Kingpin in the comics. She is actually Kingpin's assassin, so they could change that, of course. They could make her attached to somebody else, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think we're going to end up with Kingpin, but again, that's just a thought. There's no confirmation on that. But they spend a lot of time trying to make you think that Jack DeCane is the bad guy. We see him take the sword. We catch him lying. He's kind of sleazy. He's, quoting psychology books. Just there's nothing really, and they really set up the thing about him killing Armand. But the thing is that there are two dead people in this series. Armand and Derek were at the beginning of this, and the only tie to both of them is Eleanor. Now, I think it's just likely she killed both of them. She used the Battle of New York as the cover for the first killing, and she used Ronin's sighting as the cover for the second killing. Now, again, Kate's father is tied to the mob in the comics. Well, Kate's father's dead, so they do a gender swap, and now it's her mom. And I could see her maybe being the big bad, which would be an interesting twist. Maybe she's someone like Madame Mask, which is one of the rumors, and Madame Mask pops up in the comics, and the haircut kind of matches, stuff like that. But I don't know. It just doesn't feel, it almost feels like they're pointing at Jack too much. So, and I got to tell you, this whole family drama thing that they're spending a lot of time on really needs to go somewhere, because otherwise it's just taking up way too much of the show. Now, the other thing that bugs me is how easily everybody's finding each other. Again, Kate has that app from her mom's company that she can sign into to track people's phones. Okay. But how did Clint track her when she was Ronin? How did the Tracksuit Mafia track her all that time? It's New York. It's one of the busiest cities in the world. how do you track somebody that easily or find them? Yeah, see, there's some problems with the series I'm having, and I wanted to like it a lot more. I'm going to stick with it. We'll keep doing these on Thursdays from going forward. I need to like Kate more, and it's not there yet. So when they give us some more about Kate that we can like, and we can move a little more, and we get a little more Clint in the series, I think I'll be fine. Right now, it's not quite clicking for me. So I'm not telling people not to watch it. I think you should, because I think it'll get better from all the clips and stuff we've seen, but it's a little rough first. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I will not be here tomorrow because it's Thanksgiving. I hope you all have a terrific holiday. If you celebrate, if you don't, you're somewhere else. Yeah. Brian says, I was honestly a little underwhelmed, but I'm here for the whole ride. Exactly. That's the perfect response. Or that's exactly the way I feel about it. So, all right, guys, stick around for Rex and John. Rex and the Not Nicks for comic collectibles coming up. They have a very cool Daredevil Elektra cover by Adi Granoff that's signed by Charles Soule. That's one of the things they have up today. I'm actually looking at that one myself. But stick around for the show and see if you get yourself something. And we will talk tomorrow. Have a great holiday, or we'll talk next week. Have a good one. There'll be Pop Go the Writers tomorrow and a bunch of other great encores. So join the experience tomorrow. We'll still be here, but nothing, I won't be. So have a great night.